UFC 304 is bound to be a good one this weekend, and you can get even closer to the action when you check out my partners, DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC. New to DraftKings? Check this out. New customers who bet just $5 get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. Use the promo code Sonnen. DraftKings, the crown is yours. That's right. New customers can bet just $5 on anything and receive $150 in bonus bets instantly. DraftKings is giving new customers a shot to get in on the action all night long. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. DraftKings is the one-stop shop for all things daily fantasy, where you have the shot to win cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. New customers use my promo code SONN and bet just $5 on anything and get $150 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code SONN only at DraftKings Sportsbook.
Short notice fights, what do you guys think of them? I mean, what do you really think of them? And let me ask you from this perspective. Volkanovski's in Manchester right now. And somehow Volkan's up in the conversation that, hey, by the way, our main event here for the 70-pound title, Belal Muhammad and Leon Edwards, they're not weighed in yet. The fight isn't here yet. And by the way, they don't have a backup fighter. Like, somehow this conversation comes up and Volkanovski speaks on it, and he says, I would do it. And he weighs in for both guys. He says, I get along real well with Leon, but that didn't have anything to do with it. If I'm here to save the day, I'm going to save the day. And he said he finds that he matches up real well with Belal Muhammad. And I'm not here to dig into that fight. I'm not here to dig into a fight of... It simply is not going to happen. Like, if one of them misses weight, Volk doesn't step in. It's not that kind of a situation. What I'm here to ask you about is, what do you think of short notice fights? Because one thing that's happened in this sport with the brand Ultimate Fighting Championship specifically, this is not industry-wide. This is very unique to the brand, and the explanations as to why are very wide-ranging in theory, which is the replacement fight ends up being bigger than the original. And that's not industry-wide. I mean, I can think of an organization, Tom Atencio, friend of mine, owned Affliction, lost Josh Barnett, a friend of mine. In the main event, not only did they cancel the event, the marketing that they spent on the event that they then had to cancel, thus not recuperating, they went out of business. They closed up the door. Affliction never held another show. Now, I'm only offering you that one story because industry-wide, it is a massive, massive problem. And it's very hard to get off the ground. How do you not find yourself in a spot like that? Well, you have a lot of guys under contract. How do you fulfill contracts if you have lots of guys, if you don't have lots of venues and dates and can put on lots of shows? I mean, do you see where this is a massive cart before the horse situation? But the UFC has largely fallen forward. One of the biggest fights turned out to be one of the biggest fights. Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo. But the build-up to that, the marketing into that, they lost it on Fight Week. Insert Chad Mendes. And what Chad Mendes and Conor McGregor ended up doing in terms of actual pay-per-view numbers exceeded the projected numbers for Conor versus Aldo. And you know what? I'm one of them. I was a buyer either way. Like, I was into that. I will tell you, I felt a genuine, different level of excitement when it became Chad. And that really doesn't have to do with Chad Mendes, Jose Aldo, or Conor McGregor. There was something about that change that just worked out. And I could give you several other examples for the UFC, but I'll just give you that one. And I'll ask you, what do you think of short notice fights? Because the point that Volkanovski was trying to make is, hey, that's a pretty big paycheck, and it's a lot less work. The point that Volkanovski was trying to make, like, Volkanovski wasn't trying to do any level of promotion. He's just this really sincere guy. If you ever get an interview from Dan Hooker, like, you're just getting whatever he actually feels. It's real. There's no hustle behind it. And it's a big spot in a big statement for Volkanovski, because as soon as you come off of one square, you can never paint it quite as bright. Volkanovski was of the mind of, hey, I'm going to take a break, and then I'm going to fight for my title. That's already done. That's guaranteed. That's promised. I don't know if that's going to be Max or Topuria by that time, but when I come back, it will be for my title. That's a good, hard stance. And one likely the company said, yeah, man, we see it your way at some point. Now, they might have said it as a conciliatory prize, just making you feel nice. It was the polite thing to do. It was a white lie. It was for the situation. They might have been. But as soon as you come off it, it's very hard to go back on it. Like, even if you're doing a make-believe what-if, like in this situation, as soon as you say, yes, I would fill in, and yes, I would save the day, and yes, I would fight so-and-so, as soon as you do that, you've come off the position that you had, that you were squeezing and you were locked on. You've come off it to a degree. And you will never get a hold of it quite as tight. So, I will just share with you, like, what you think of backup fights. There's a little bit more to them. Dan Ige had the ultimate save. The ultimate save, I believe, of all time. I don't know if anybody could give you one quite like that. And there are two sides of it. Like, the analysis, or the idea of the statement paralysis by analysis is so true. Which is, you start analyzing, you start focusing, right? You can never psych yourself up. That's not a real thing. You'll have people tell you, get psyched, but they've never done it. Like, they don't really know what it means. It's just something that you say. You can never psych yourself up, but you damn sure can psych yourself out. And you can get locked on something, whether you're so dead set that you're going to do it, or that you're going to defend it from happening to you. You can get so dead set on it that you freeze, that you'll lock up in the moment. It's very basic fight or flight. Like, this isn't reserved for athletes. This is reserved for human beings. It's just athletes and athletics oftentimes will show it. They'll put it on display. There are police officers who have found themselves in a situation where they're actually there. They're there with a criminal, and they lock up so much. They've had their guns drawn, and they freeze so much that they throw their gun at the criminal and they turn and run. There's a very real human nature to it, and I'm only sharing with you, like, yeah, on one hand, you get a whole bunch of credit. You saved the day. You stepped in at the last minute. On one hand. But the other side of it is, you get a paycheck, and you're not having to go through training camp. I mean, that is the other side. That's what Volkanovski in the very real, when he was just being very real and commenting to you guys. Like, how are you going to break up your pay? Say you get $1 million. I'm just throwing numbers at you, but let's just say you get $1 million and you did 60 days of training camp. So you're going to break that into 60s. How are you going to work your trainer in there? How many days you did strength conditioning? How many, so you the head coach? How many you were with your boxing guy? I mean, how are you going to break that up? Like, the math gets pretty hard. And, I mean, it's to the point that managers don't even know how to deal with this. So they just go flat rate, boom, give me 10%. Give me 10%. But it's kind of the way that you have to do it. Some days that's going to be really great for you. Some days it's not. But this is the industry. Give me 10%. Wherever it goes, it goes. If I can make a living, good for me. So, if you had $1 million in a 60-day training camp and you could break that down, and that was $6,000 a day. Whatever the math is on that. Or maybe it's on fight night. And how many punches did you throw? And you knock the guy out. With one punch, you got $1 million. So now all of a sudden you decide that I got $1 million for every punch that I threw. Like, it's one of these things. How are you going to break that down? And when you realize, to Volkanovski's point, the check is going to come in the form of whatever the contract called for, and there might be even a little bit of sugar on it. And the athlete's always going to come out looking good, like he did a favor, like he saved the day. But Volkanovski knows the other side of it, doesn't he? He knows the truth. Which is whatever you got paid or whatever you had to break it down into all your coaches and all your strength and conditioning sessions, they were all at zero. You didn't have to do that camp. You didn't have to get up in the morning. You didn't have a sacrifice. You didn't have to discipline. What time you went to bed the night before, what you had for supper the night before. All these things that you have to do day after day after day after day to be part of camp don't come into it. Now, your likelihood of winning, if you're not prepared and that isn't the guy that you zeroed in on, I mean, that's on you a little bit. Right? I don't know anything about it. It's one of the reasons I never lost, because I never had to get ready. I never had to get ready because I always stayed ready. But there is a real belief in that, and not everybody does it. And it is one of those spots where you could fill in last notice, and maybe you are selling your soul. And maybe you are just going out there and getting a paycheck. But either way, there's another side to short notice matches. And we see them more times than not, particularly performance-wise, working out for the guy on short notice. And the question does begin, why? How come all these guys, I take 10 guys that took fights on short notice, all 10 of them won? Why? How does that happen? What is the difference here? People love to tell you that iron sharpens iron, and it's true, but iron also dulls iron. And I'm just curious, if you have more time to think about it, you're armed with the statements that Volkanovski gave, what do you think of short notice fights?